Good morning and welcome back to Morning Express. We're glad you're watching. My name is Sophia Wanuna. It's time for State of the Nation. This morning we're focusing on the matters African Court of Justice. We saw a lot of coverage on that over the weekend. The Kenyan delegation headed by the president over the weekend at Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, at the African Union Summit. Spoke quite a bit about this matter, the proposals for expanding the African Court of Justice mandate to see it have a more wider reach in as far as the matters it handles. And of course we had the president there pledging your 92 million shillings taxpayers money in as far as setting that up or expanding the mandate. And we'd want to hear your thoughts as we continue with this discussion in as far as whether you support that decision by the president, that pledge of 92 million shillings towards the African Court of Justice, and also engage with us throughout the show on this matter. What are your thoughts? Do you think that is the way to go, or will you be in agreement or disagreement with some of the views that will be shared by my guest this morning, who I want to introduce to you? Joining us in studio on my immediate left on the couch is Norman Magaya. He's the head of the Code Secretariat. Thank you for joining us this morning. Dr. David Matsanga, Chairman and CEO, Africa World Media. Karibu sana. I'm CEO, very ready for this discussion with a whole file.
Oh, yes.
Don't bury us in it.
No. I just want to keep Africa running. I'm ready to do so.
All right. Yes. Briefly, we'll also be joined by Martin Olo, political analyst. He'll be part of the panel in just a short while. So do stay with us for that. Keep your thoughts coming up. Phone numbers will be on your screen. SMS as 22155. Tweets at Sophia Wanuna. I'll be sampling your thoughts as we go along. Norman, I'll begin with you on this discussion. It's all about expanding the mandate of the African Court of Justice. Do you think that is where Kenya needs to go in terms of supporting this push?
For a start, I think no compelling case has been made for the establishment of the African Court of Justice that exercises criminal jurisdiction. There are various factors that we need to put into consideration. One is that a criminal court, in order for it to deliver substantive justice, must be adequately financed. That's one factor that we must consider. If you look at the ICC trials, one case takes a minimum of around 20 million US dollars. Now, 20 million US dollars is around 14% of the overall budget of the African Union. So what then are they apportioning to this court? Secondly, are they saying that ICC is a court they cannot control, and therefore they want an African court that they can exercise control? And the third issue that we need to look at is, are there any lessons that have been drawn from the Special Court for Sierra Leone, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, in terms of what it will take to establish a court that will be credible, that will not be seen to hound opponents? And most importantly is that the envisaged court has no jurisdiction to try sitting presidents. And that's a very dangerous trend. What are the African presidents? What is the message that they are sending to us? That they want to commit crimes and shield themselves from the wheels of justice. Most importantly is we should be focusing on sustainable peace in the African continent at the moment. The establishment of a court that exercises criminal jurisdiction is an indictment of the African leadership that they still have a culture of instilling instability, fear among the population that will inevitably require the intervention of courts in order to have lasting peace in Africa. So in totality, the African presidents have not made a compelling case as to why we should have a special court that exercises criminal jurisdiction in the African continent.
All right. You've heard what Norman has had to say as far as no compelling argument there for the African Court of Justice. You, however, disagree. You think there's merit in this push?
There is. There's plenty of merit in forming the African Court and extending its mandate. If you read the Malabo protocol.
Let's hold on there. The Malabo protocol. Yes. Break it down for us, because it's a protocol, an agreement that has been mentioned quite a bit. Many do not understand it.
This case without looking at facts, and that is part of the African ignorance. All of us have no facts. Malabo Protocol extends the mandate to try criminal cases like crimes against humanity, genocide, and other things. So we had this.
Does it touch on presidents?
No, no.
Why not?
What it does on the presidents is that we are not opposed to charging presidents. We are opposed to charge sitting presidents.
Why?
We want you to wait until your term is over.
Why?
That's what happens in Europe. Excuse me. In Europe, the ICC does not go for Tony Blair. They wait until Tony Blair left, and then they bring charges. Why do you want us in Africa to waste all the time a president who has been elected by 40 million Kenyans to be running into the cold in the ICC to stand? The deputy president is sitting there 10 hours, yawning, doing this over nothing. All what the Malabo Protocol is doing is that, yes, these charges can be brought in an African court, but we have to wait for for example, if President Kenyatta's term ends, he becomes a private citizen, a former president of Republic of Kenya. Fine. The court now can go and say, hello.
But how did right now, because he did appear before the ICC, all these proceedings before his matter and case was dropped or withdrawn, he was there. How did that interfere with his functions as president?
It has interfered.
How?
Sophia, if you can see in Kenya, since this ICC saga started, there are so many things that have stagnated. The presidency cannot focus on delivering services to the people of
But
Kenya.
Isn't that the reassurance he gave while campaigning, whilst knowing he had a matter in the court, that that was a personal matter he'd handle, and as elected president he'd be able to...
A personal matter has become political matter also for the
So
nation.
he lied to Kenyans?
So you can... It is not a lie to Kenyans. He went to the court alone as a personal, as an individual, and we came back. But let's come back to the argument which my brother has made, which I believe Africans must understand why this court has been extended. The mandate has been extended because there is no need of running every African into that court when we can do it in Arusha. We are not saying we are opposing anything that ICC is doing. Fine, ICC has done a good. The only problem I have with ICC is OTP. When we went to Rome to bring up ICC, 1998, I was one of those people. But the court did not have a mandate for genocide. The court refused. Most African countries like America, China, Russia, they said no way, because these countries were committing genocide, invasion of other states. So they refused. Genocide was only added there on 2013. What is wrong with Africa court extending its mandate so that it can catch all the criminal activities that take place in this continent? That is all what we are saying. The other thing is to say compelling case. What compelling case? The case is already here. The court has been working. The court has been working, only that it has not been working on criminal cases.
All right. Matanga, I want us to bring in Olo into the conversation shortly. I just want to remind our viewers to engage with us as well. You do remember the president when he was at Addis pledged that 92 million towards the expansion of the mandate of the African Court of Justice. And it's a discussion we're having this morning. We're breaking it down for you. We're hearing from both sides, understanding this Malabo Protocol or agreement that has been mentioned quite a bit and widely. Matsanga insisting that there is merit in this call and this push for an African Court of Justice. Not all agree. I want to now bring in Martin Olo, who's a political analyst. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. Your thoughts on this? He argues, it's not a compelling case that is being put forward in as far as budgetary constraints. How is this going to be funded? Look at the AU in itself, 78% of the money coming from external sources. You have the question of ICC and what is the problem with it and why can't it be fixed instead of trying to get something else? Your thoughts on this matter?
I think that we have to be honest with ourselves as a country and basically say that ICC is an eyesore to us. We do not like ICC, but it's not a reason for us to begin to look for all sorts of other alternatives. So the African Court to me is not an alternative. It does not offer a solution. It does not help African leaders or Kenyans for that matter. We do not want to subject our people or our leaders to any process that is external. ICC, we feel, should not be prosecuting sitting MPs, presidents, and so we want to immunize presidents from ICC. Same thing should apply to the African Court. We would not want a president to sit there, and indeed there's a move that says we should not allow sitting presidents to go to any court or to be charged with on any crime. So if that's the case, then there is absolutely no reason for an African court. Because if we have immunized our presidents and our leaders, then we do not need a mechanism other than an ICC, which can as well give us immunity so that a sitting president is not tried and is tried after. So for me, fix if there's need to fix ICC, but do not create other mechanisms in Africa, because they do not necessarily help us. We do not want to subject ourselves to any mechanism other than a Kenyan mechanism. We have also said that ICC is open to manipulation. The same reason, the African Court will be open to manipulation, because the membership of it are the heads of state and the various countries. Now, if we don't want manipulation in ICC, then we should not want it in African Court. And for me, the African Court is a bad news for Africans, because if African leaders are advocating for it, then it's only likely to be a court that is going to be trying opponents of African leaders. So people in Uganda will be very afraid, because then Message is likely to be there. People in Zimbabwe will be very afraid because Changirai is likely to be referred there. So basically, an African court is open to manipulation, much as the ICC court has been argued to be open to manipulation.
All right, so let's go issue by issue. A number of elements you mentioned there. Let's begin with ICC.
Yes.
Okay, put them against each other.
Yeah.
So why not fix ICC? The challenges that are seen there, instead of creating a new court that...
it is good I've found my match here, Mr. Olo. One of the things that I have ever said, and I continue to say in this country since 2008, which you believe I never wronged. The ICC is not a bad institution. The office of the chief prosecutor is the bad institution in the ICC, because they were given mandate to come and look for crimes, which we all agreed. When they reached here, they did a different, not only in Kenya, several places in Africa. They have done a shoddy job. That's why people are completely... And
what defines shoddy? Who determines what is shoddy? Is it the people who it doesn't work in their favor that say shoddy?
For example, let me ask you, if witnesses said they lied, what do you do to a lying witness? You arrest him. Under Article 70. Several witnesses in the Ruto, Uhuru case, Sanga case, have lied. And they are still lying.
Have others lied in other cases? You're only quoting one particular case here.
The Uganda case, for example, is a tragedy. Because look at the lying that took place. What did the Ocampo do in Uganda?
And what prevents that from happening in the African court?
Shoddy. You asked me a question.
Yes.
Shoddy. What qualifies the shoddy? You come and pick flash discs instead of doing forensic investigation. That's what Kenyans wanted. Kenyans had 1,300 people dead. I tell you that in the name of God is watching. On this 1,300, there is not a single death certificate, not attached.
All right.
So you cannot win such a case. We should reform. If ICC wants to be with Africa, let them reform the OTP. That's what AU is saying.
All right.
AU is not saying we are distancing ourselves from African, the ICC because of this bad. It is saying reform
Your
the
point
OTP.
is made, Matsanga. So OTP is the problem. Norman, is this fixable, the challenge at ICC, to then see perhaps people like Matsanga happier with this court?
I think the tragedy of our times is that the people who believe in the philosophy that Matsanga advances is that we have Kenyanized the ICC process.
Yeah.
But we need to contextualize the process that led to the formation of ICC. You cannot, for example, say that you want to move away from the International Criminal Court because there are inadequacies in the office of OTP. If you apply the same to our Kenyan situation, we have had issues with the office of DPP, but that has not made anybody to run away from the Kenyan courts because the prosecution has a problem. Secondly, if you weigh the ICC mechanism against the against the proposed African court, one of the factors that come into play is that until even this Malabo Protocol, very few Africans actually knew of the existence of the East African Court of Human and People's Rights, which means it has been largely dysfunctional. It was not doing any work that could really make it a prominent court. Secondly, now you want to add it to the criminal jurisdiction. It's a unique creature that has not happened in legal jurisprudence elsewhere. If you look at the nature of the European Court of Human Rights, the American system, you have not had a human rights court exercising criminal jurisdiction. So what do we want to do? We are doing an experiment, and we are doing an experiment on a dangerous continent. The African continent has its own story of transgressions on human rights that have littered it since independence up to now.
I think if
now, what guarantee do you offer the African citizens that if you accord this court a criminal jurisdiction, one is that you will be able to deliver justice to the victims? Because if you are saying that, okay, we want to move out of ICC and transfer this mandate to the African court, if the African Court of Justice becomes credible today, tomorrow we will start demanding for a regional court.
But in as far as the ICC, before I come to you, Olo,
under the East African
in as far as the ICC is concerned, do you have confidence in it? Or do you think there needs to be some changes here and there? Briefly.
There are issues to be fixed.
Okay. Olo.
Yeah, basically, what my friend Masanga is saying is an interesting point. When you see, the ICC process is a mix of both common and civil. That you have the court and you have the prosecutor, both involved in investigations as well as in prosecution. Now, what he's saying is very interesting. Indeed, the office of the prosecutor is a problem, or its investigations haven't lived up to expectations. And that's a good thing. Why is it a good thing? We've seen the judges have not given in to that kind of thing. They have actually pushed the OTP to drop the case or bring better evidence in case of Uhuru Kenyatta. So you can say that this court is alive. It's alive to the fact that if the evidence is shoddy, it will go nowhere. So if the OTP is doing a bad job, that is even better for anybody who is before it in terms of one who is being accused. Of course, it's not good news for the victims, because then again, the way this court works is that it's not just about the accused, it's also about the victim, it's about justice. So yes, a bad job by OTP is bad news for a victim, but it's good news for the accused. And we can see in the case of the Kenyan case that that is an argument that we can talk about. We've seen the case against the president go the way it has gone. So I would say that the reasons the opponents of ICC raise about the shoddiness of Okambo, the shoddiness of Bensouda, is not bad news to the extent that you are looking at the accused. But it's bad news to the extent that you are looking at the victims, who indeed we know that people died, we know people lost relatives, and what one would have liked is to see a very good mechanism that assures all and perhaps provides for all.
All right, so what do you respond to that argument? Because he says the incompetence, if you like, of the prosecutor's office was brought out bare naked in as far as Uhuru's case is concerned, leading to its being withdrawn. So the system is working, isn't it not?
It is not. But you know what? The Uhuru case became even a nightmare. They have not let him off. They have said,
well, in as
wait. Okay. They have said we shall come back.
And we don't know if
we might come back. What might come back in the presence
if there will be evidence.
If there will be evidence.
Yes, they could cook evidence. Tomorrow,
which might not stand
they might
in
cook
court.
Evidence,
but
which they cooked evidence in the first place. But let me support you on this. African court is not fighting ICC. African court is simply saying they are bringing justice nearer to the people of Africa.
And I have a problem with that.
Look, wait. One day you might not have a problem.
No, I have a problem with that.
You might become a president. Although you might become a president.
No. So it's to protect presidents, you're saying?
It's not.
What is
I'm not saying
hard for Mugabe?
You're saying you might become a president.
It is. Let me tell you, the notion that African court is fighting ICC is misplaced. We should not think of that. We are simply saying, one, ICC complementarity status failed. ICC was supposed not to usurp the powers of the national governments, national courts. It came here. Whenever Ocampo could come from the airport, President Kibaki would close his office to meet Ocampo as though he was another head of state. It failed on complementarity status. They usurped They usurped the national...
Let me ask you this before we move on. Let me ask you this. Does the Kenyan constitution grant immunities against prosecution of a sitting president, as we are seeing in the case of the proposals in the African Court of Justice?
It does. The Kenyan constitution says
it does not.
The president should
not on international.
Look, that is where Kenya went wrong. On international
No, it's not about where went wrong. It's about the constitution. Does it provide immunity?
The act, that's why the parliament...
Let him speak.
That is what, let me also finish here. That's why the parliament is going to strike off that act.
That's the next stage.
Takes the president.
That is what you desire to happen. We have not reached there yet. His point, before you continue, I'm coming back to you. Yes, your point.
I think we need to differentiate a few things. One, that when my brother Masanga says that the African court brings justice near, the contrary is true. We don't want justice in Hague. We will not want it in Africa. We for heads of state and for for perpetrators of crimes. So we've had this from the Honorable Museveni. We've had this from Mugabe. The excuses we are giving that we're bringing justice closer can only be a threat to the opposition. It can only be bad news for people who oppose African leaders. Then secondly, the issue of immunity, the Kenyan constitution and the Kenyan law is that the president is immunized from prosecution on matters criminal and civil in issues that are municipal, domestic. Local. But on matters of international, that immunity is not there.
So why are we appearing to contradict our own constitution? What the people of Kenya then sought to achieve, to have that if international, charges, criminal charges such as this came up, that the person on the seat of the president should be able to face them. The African court is countering what was the desire of the Kenyan people.
You see, if I were Kenyan, this constitution, you ask me, I don't like it.
But it is our constitution.
That's why I'm saying, if I were a Kenyan and are given to be under this
But now that the people of Kenya have spoken in that constitution...
Because this constitution is just a cut and a paste from the United States, from South Africa.
We can't allow...
You cannot trivialize matters that way,
We cannot sit here and condemn our constitution. It is our constitution.
I said...
It is our constitution.
Passed by the Kenyan people.
I said, I abide because... It is a constitution of the Republic of Kenya.
Yes.
But it has a lot of flaws that actually should be changed immediately so that it can help quite a number of Kenyans.
Which Kenyans? The presidents?
Look at, not the president. We are not looking at about the president. We are looking at an ordinary mwananchi everywhere. This, for example, if you want justice, you carry your suspects 5,000 miles away from the place where the crime was committed? No. The courts in Kenya, you see part of the problem that Kenya has, and which I agree that it is making everybody very disturbed, is we have not created what we call a redemption strategy. We don't have a redemption strategy, although this court will raid in and raid in. Tomorrow, Fatou Bensouda will raid in again. Because there is no redemption strategy.
I want to come to
we have not set up a court in this country that can try people who committed crimes.
You've run away from the question. Yes. The Kenyan people envisioned and in the constitution agree and say that if it's international charges of crimes against humanity, that should continue to happen. Why is the African Court of Justice coming back to then say there should be immunity for sitting heads of states?
But until they leave office.
Yeah, then why? That goes against the wish of the Kenyan people.
In African court, we are trying to make presidents who are in power to work. You did not elect Uhuru Kenyatta to be shuffling.
He was working as he was shuttling.
Wait. We did not elect President Uhuru Kenyatta to shuttle between Nairobi, Hague. Oh my God, the deputy president sits there 2 weeks, yawning in a court.
I think
all right, let's listen to Norman.
We elected, the people of Kenya elected.
That is not an
I think what Masanga you are trying to do is to run so many facts and at the end of the day convolute the whole thing into something that cannot be understood.
Which one?
But point number one is that justice delayed is justice denied.
Who has delayed?
One
is
when you say that a sitting head of a sitting president should serve his full term until he retires is when criminal charges can be brought against him. You are delaying justice to the victim.
What happens.
Secondly, you are not going to give an African despot 10 years. to be in power, then you want to bring charges. He will have cleared all the witnesses. They have all the intelligence mechanisms of the state. They have the police at their... I mean, they will clear the entire thing. But one thing that we need to look at, which Masanga is also running away from, is saying that the African court is not a court that is calculated to cushion African president. But look at the speeches in Addis Ababa when they were making the push for the establishment of the African court. All of them were criticisms and attacks directed at the ICC, clearly indicating that there was something that the African presidents are running away from. And we must be alive to that. Secondly, we are actually making Kenya look bad, that we are pushing for a protocol, pushing for its implementation, even offering financial support, something that has not happened before. But even what we are offering is not able to push this thing off the sail. So if Masanga is right, if we were to assume that he is right for a second, okay, with regard to these ICC cases, before we went to ICC, we said local mechanisms versus ICC. Okay, they said those who bear the greatest responsibility, ICC. The other criminals try in the local jurisdiction. To date, there has been no single case that has been brought to our courts.
Let's hear from Olo before
and thirdly, just before he goes, they made a call for the establishment of the International Criminal Division in our High Court here. A police paper was even prepared. What has hampered the establishment of that court is financial support. Now, why can't we put this 92 million shillings in this international
into the local system? All right.
Yes,
I want to come to this, Sophie, and say that we want to get politics out of this discussion.
Yes.
ICC is a justice, it's a court of law, and it's not a political court, so to speak. And that people are not there to be charged or are not being driven there for charges against their political activities. No, it's about crimes. And so anybody who has that, meets that threshold is likely to find themselves in the ICC. Now, and we are not saying that everybody who finds himself there is guilty. Absolutely not. They are innocent, they are suspects until they go through the entire process and found guilty. So anybody, a president, an ordinary Kenyan like me and or Masanga here, should be able to go to the ICC without any fear in the name of innocence. If I know that I'm innocent, I'll be absolved from it. So we don't want to say the courts in Kenya are prone to, they are going to try people and these people are our leaders, so we should not have courts. No. Let us know that it will take a criminal or it will take a suspicion that I've committed a crime for me to be taken to court. So court's existence does not necessarily threaten harmony politically and so on. So if we take that, we go back to argue that there is a level of dishonesty here that is not coming through. And I want to give you the case of Museveni. He comes to Nairobi, he tells us that he does not have faith in ICC and that he's going to move a motion to ensure that Africa has a court of its own. Now, after the Malabo Protocol, and after Kenya and a few other countries have ratified, 11 of them, out of the 11, one of the countries that is there is not there is Uganda. So you'd have thought that they would quickly ratify. They are not there. Number two, when he doesn't have faith in the ICC process, Omwen, the LRA guy, is arraigned with his concurrence in the ICC court. So that gives credence to my argument that it appears that even the African court or the ICC court is only good for opponents of African leaders, not good for African leaders. And that's why those who are supporting them are clear that they want them immunized so that only their opponents and only the people that they don't like are tried there. Now, that is not the way justice goes. Okay. We want to argue that we do have issues in Africa, and there are many issues. One of them is not to rush to establish a court that then has to be funded by ourselves, or we have to get into our little monies that that we actually and it's not enough to fund this. So what do we want? We want a mechanism that's international, acceptable, and if it's working, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Don't fix it. Address the question of Yoweri Museveni.
First of all, Sophia, there are things I want to correct here, and today once for all.
Yes.
I'm not a spokesman of Museveni. Therefore, I will not speak on his behalf. I have substance.
On the double speak that has been brought out by...
That is what I'm saying. I have substance and a style. My style and the substance is different. My position on ICC is different. we only concur on how bad it is. The Uganda scenario was the first country in Africa to have ICC invited by the President of the Republic of Uganda. We hammered a Juba peace agreement, myself and other people, Dr. Riek Machar Chisano and other people. That agreement gave all LRA commanders who had to actually return home in 2008. They are in Kampala. They have resettled. They have gone through the court that we hammered. Now, the crimes that Ongwen has committed are crimes outside. If you are caught with drugs going to China, for example, I don't think, although they will bring you back to Nairobi court, you'll go to firing squad in China if you are found guilty. So Ongwen was found in a territory of Central African Republic, which is where he has committed various crimes, and therefore Uganda government became a problem. It stood in the middle. The CAR people wanted him charged, and therefore
when were the warrants issued?
Yes, the warrant of each Ongwen. I'm not bothered about Ongwen's case. Ongwen was abducted. There's no case for name. Ongwen is going to come home to be rehabilitated. This was a kid abducted at the age of 17, not even 17, actually 14, taken by the commanders. So he's not going to say if he did not kill, he could have been killed. In law, although you know, you are a lawyer, you know that. Let me come to the point of ICC being political or not political. It is political. Although I will tell you why it is political. United States of America is not a signatory. But the United States of America makes more decisions on ICC, seriously, on countries that they want to penalize. So why do you call this a law place where the law has failed? Witnesses in Kenya, if you are sick on the sick bay in Eldoret Referral Hospital, I don't think they carry you on a stretcher.
What do you read into Uganda not having its signature on the Malabo Protocol?
Uganda, on ministerial statement, resolution of the AU, I was inside there. It supported fully.
But when it mattered?
Now, the ratification goes back to Parliament. Why people are not ratifying immediately is their Parliament goes back, like the Kenyan Parliament is discussing the legal implications of the withdrawal of ICC. And another thing which people have...
So you're saying that the 11 signatures on it right now, all those parliaments have had these matters discussed?
Yes, people came with their straight answers.
But Masanga, you need to be honest with this.
No,
Let's hear
I gave you time. I gave you time.
You've been speaking for the last 3 minutes.
No, but Sophia, I'm saying this. The government of Republic of Uganda has gone back to consult. I'm not their spokesman.
We have no evidence that
now that is what
no public evidence.
So you could get that evidence from when Museveni became here to make his statement. He did not make the statement for Masanga. He made the statement as the president of Republic of Uganda.
Your point has been made. Let's listen from Norman.
I think there are two issues where Masanga is outrightly wrong. One is that accession to treaties, for a state to become a state party to a treaty, you don't need to go to parliament. You become a state party, then you come for domestication when the thing goes through parliament. So Uganda does not really have to go to its parliament in order to it to assent to treaties. And there are so many treaties that Uganda is a signatory to that have not gone through the Ugandan parliament. So that is not the case. We need to be clear about that.
In the Kenyan case, once it is ascended to, it is part of law.
Yeah, it's part of our law. Secondly, the warrants of arrest for Ongwen and company, they were issued on the basis of crimes committed in Uganda, not in Central Africa. Yes. So it is wrong to say that he is at the ICC because he committed extraterritorial
I think we got it wrong here. The warrants were issued.
No. Masanga,
crimes committed in Southern Sudan.
Matsanga.
It's not Uganda. They were not reachable by the government of Republic of Uganda.
Matsanga.
Yes.
So I think we need to be clear with that.
Yes.
But more significantly, coming back to the African court, I think they are attempting to create something that they will know it will never work, and so they will be safe. One, I brought out the financial issue.
Yes, which
and if you look at the budgetary implications of the tribunals that we have had, the special criminal tribunal for Sierra Leone took $26 million US dollars. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in 2010 alone took $130 million. What is the total contribution to the African Court of Human Rights by AU annually? It is not more than $2 million. So, and then when it comes now to exercising criminal, when it comes to exercising with the help of other donors, not African countries, when it comes to exercising criminal jurisdiction, it is not just sufficient to set up a court and an investigative arm. It requires even more. It requires that you must avail facilities that will ensure that there is a credible exercise in terms of investigations, in terms of the facilities of the court to get to the bottom of the crimes that were committed, in terms of facilitation of victims. This is something that African countries are not going to do. And if you want to know that the beginning is wrong, is the gesture by Kenya. Because it simply means that there is an ambivalence, that there is an apprehension on the other African countries as to the budgetary implications of the establishment of this court.
Although I want
so we
to
are
put
beginning
this
something
to you.
that cannot fly.
Would you say that those pushing for this expanding of the mandate of the African Court of Justice are simply seeking a tool that they can manipulate? Because largely the discussion has boiled down to the African leaders who support this want a mechanism that will self-preserve.
You know, Sophie, I couldn't agree with that statement anymore. The same way Masanga says that the US manipulates the ICC is the same way African leaders are looking for a court they will manipulate. Because what you're saying is there's manipulation. There's manipulation at the national level, there will be manipulation at the AU level, so that we will not escape from it. And the African leaders setting up this court are not going to give themselves a rope they'll hang themselves with. And that is not known in human history. Human beings take care of their interests, not in a manner that exterminates them. So in terms of leadership, we know there are issues with the ICC. Indeed, there are control issues, the superpowers and so on. Indeed, there are politics around the ICC. But the decisions that are made in ICC, the court process operates within the rule of law, within international norms that are known. I have yet to hear, even Masanga here or any opponent, take on an argument by the judge, take on a decision of the judge. You have issues with OTP, that is great, because he's a prosecutor, they are investigators, they'll bring issues. But you can challenge the evidence. And indeed, if I was a defense counsel or defending any of the accused, whether it's Ruto or whether, I would have many arguments for them against OTP, no doubt. But then what is the ruling of the judges? Are they objective? That to me, I'm assured at the international level. Can I be assured of the same in an African context? I can't. Because it's again the same African leaders who are going to nominate the various judges that are going to be in these courts. Now, if they nominate these judges, as they will do, and they also want to influence them, as they might do, what chances do I have that I need that? What is my position? My position is, we may have issues with the ICC, but the solution is not creating an African court. That is a toothless bulldog, is a way to go, is not a way to go. If anything, I would still think that the Chief Justice of this country is right, and indeed we need to create a strong mechanism in Kenya that responds to international crimes and so on. So let's look for resources, create them in Kenya. Let's create them in Uganda. Let's create them in Zimbabwe, for heaven's sake. I mean, so that we don't have to have nationals. The same thing. We don't want the ICC to intrude. And by the way, this is very clear. And talk about complementarity. If Kenya was solid, if we were one, if we did not give ourselves away, there was no way ICC would have come in here. Remember, there was a lot of effort. Remember, even Kofi Annan said, look, if you can solve this thing locally, so be it. But if you don't, then hand over this thing to ICC. And that's what happened. There was every attempt to do things locally. There was every move to make sure that we are in control. So it was not that the ICC came and took over the case. No, we handed over the case.
Masanga, as you respond, and this argument, you cannot run away from the context and where those who feel that this will be a manipulation tool come from, looking at the politics and the manner of which the same has been practiced in Africa, that leaders in office will want to stay there for as long as they can, and if there's any fingers pointed against them, they want to ensure they somehow manipulate the same to ensure, you know, they do not account for the same. Can you run away from that this court will be simply a tool? There
are views that I agree a bit with Olo.
What do you agree with?
On the question of setting up strong national mechanisms. I have been one of the advocates of saying in conflict resolution, you must have a redemption strategy. When conflict has occurred, go back and set strong mechanisms. I agree with that all. But on the question of ICC to deliver justice, I think the justice in ICC is politically selective. It is politically motivated. Let me go here. Look at the case of Uhuru Kenyatta, which has just ended and phased away in the clouds, but then it is in the clouds. Look at it. We started with war crimes, crimes against humanity. We ended up with bank statements, land titles, cars, which car Uhuru Kenyatta sat in, bring the number plate, all matatus. Look at where we went. A court of such international standard allows witnesses, liars who have lied.
But
they go back. They go back to the same court.
The case has been withdrawn. You're now arguing in futility as far
as the judges. He's talking because I want to bring my point of the judges. He said the judges are very good. The judges finally saw this evidence of Kenyatta is not there. They saw the evidence of they wanted bank statement. Akuna. Then they said, "Oh, you go, chief prosecutor, but when you feel like coming back to this court, come back." What type of justice is that? In Africa, in fact,
it's not a matter of feeling. It's when you do have evidence.
I mean, it is like giving the chief prosecutor although time to go and fetch this evidence. If tomorrow somebody does not want Oro, I need to just go and kill somebody, put near Oro's house and get that evidence. So that type of court is not very good. Secondly, I concur fully that a redemption strategy must be there in Kenya to stop this lady called Fatou Bensouda coming again here, because she's about to come. This Ruto case is empty. It's empty. If you look at it, if you have gone to school, unless you have not seen the blackboard, but if you have seen blackboard like Olo and Mayaga, it is empty. It will collapse on 23rd of this month. You will see it. Because the witnesses are fake. They recycled themselves. They came back. Now, why don't we stop her from coming back for people on Article 70? Because she's going to come back here and pick more Kenyans to say, you are the one who created the problem.
I think
you're running away from help.
I have not run away, and
you've not answered my question.
I don't need his help on ICC. I need to tell him,
and I'm not about to give you help.
I am just saying, my point here, Mr. Oro, is this. ICC performed very badly in all African cases. Africans have not opposed ICC.
All right, Matsanga.
That's my point.
You have made your point.
I have no problem with his opinion, because that's an opinion. And basically what I want to remind Matsanga is that there are issues of international law, there are issues of international norms, there are standards that we have to play by. As long as those standards are being played by, as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, I do not go making statements that I cannot defend. So if Bensouda wants to come for more evidence, does the ICC statute enable her to do so? So be it. Let her go ahead and collect evidence. Is it going to be enough to persuade the judges? Let the judges decide that. So if we start condemning and saying she's doing a shoddy job, that's an opinion. But again, there's a court process to adjudicate. So eventually that may as well be the case or not. So I want us to find a place where we respect the institutions of law, we respect institutions of the creatures of the Constitution, and we agree and we play by the rules. And opinions are going to be there, and we must disagree or agree on those opinions, but they are opinions for what they are. On the ICC issue, we are either looking at the international level in which the crimes have occurred, and therefore whether or not the trial is keeping to that standard or not. Now, if it's not keeping to that standard, we can have an opinion, but finally the courts must decide around it, so that we are not necessarily carrying business of the court into the public. I mean, I've seen, and this is what I have issues with Matsanga and people like him, I have seen lawyers, I've seen people who are in leadership going out there addressing the ICC in political rallies. Now that to me is not going to take us anywhere. It's what Norman says, only helps paint us as people who are not who do not respect the law, people who are not law abiding and are not likely to be subject to justice. So basically what we are saying is there's nothing, or there might be issues with the ICC, but as an international court, so far, to me as a Kenyan, I feel that it's following certain precepts, and that is going okay.
All right.
Are there issues to be fixed? Yes, they can be fixed. And indeed, any court, even in Kenya here, the Supreme Court and others, we all are trying to
all right, hold on. We'll come to you, Matsanga. Yes. Let me come to Norman. We have about 3 minutes to go before we wrap up the show. I want your thoughts on the way forward. There's been the pros, the cons, those pushing for, those against this African Court of Justice, and also putting it against the ICC, and proposals to work on perhaps local mechanisms, making the same stronger. What do you think should be the focus here? That when there are situations that international crimes are committed, crimes against humanity, crimes that we should see, as you said earlier, Olo, that victims, very important, should never be forgotten, and the justice should be served and to be seen to be served as well. What should be the way forward in as far as this kind of crimes?
I think the idea of establishing the African Court is a bad idea, and it must be dropped. What we need to do is, ICC is not an automatic process. It is, ICC comes in where the local mechanisms have failed. So we need to fix two things. One, we need to fix the local mechanisms to ensure that they are responsive, that they are timely, and they are credible to conduct investigations and prosecutions that will meet the international threshold of conducting criminal proceedings. Secondly, if there are issues with the office of the prosecutor at the ICC, I think that office needs to be beefed up, it needs to be reformed, and all this falls within the jurisdiction of the state parties, where Kenya is. So Kenya needs, if anything, to make robust proposals to the Assembly of State Parties on reforming the office of the prosecutor. And then, having done that, then we address our national issues, fix the politics of the country, fix our criminal jurisdiction system in Kenya, make them credible, meet the international standards, and anybody will only go to the International Criminal Court if the local mechanisms have failed. If you look at all the African cases before the ICC, most of them have been referrals. ICC did not come for them. Africans took themselves to ICC after losing faith in the national criminal jurisdictions. So we need to fix our national criminal jurisdictions to avoid the temptation of blaming some people elsewhere when the problem lies here. Fix it nationally.
I think. All right, your final thoughts, then we come to your leader.
I think we have I strongly believe the African Court is the right direction now. Let's move 5-10 years to come, you will see the fruits of this court. There are two things that have happened. In Europe, we don't take our leaders. In Africa, we want to take our leaders. The worst problem of us educated people like Olo and Magaya is that we paint this continent very dark. In fact, in the darkness of it's wrong. When we say we have despots, we should actually try to change.
Yeah, but
you don't want to listen.
No,
at times,
I'm giving you
as a lecturer, you listen first. As a lecturer, you listen, and
okay,
the student talks.
Go ahead.
We paint this continent as dark people. We don't stand up to say that we have a problem. We need to move ahead. The ICC that you are talking about is not the whole kingdom of God. This ICC has got so many faults. Tony Blair invaded Afghanistan. Israel is hitting Palestine. Every day, Syria, ISIS, sent by United States of America, has turned on them to eat them in Syria. Nobody has indicted them. Look here. Look, Boko Haram. Nobody. Because of double standards of the ICC, they only came to this country because they wanted something.
What I'm hearing a lot from you as you continue,
yes,
what I'm hearing a lot from you is the bashing of ICC. You, however, not giving reassurances that you're sure in this case this African Court of Justice mandate is expanded, that all these ills you're mentioning will not be replicated, that even become worse.
Sophia, each court has challenges.
So fix the challenges and then move on instead of creating another challenge.
But I have been in all state party conferences of ICC. We have been crying for more than 6 years to say, please, change something. They don't change. Let me come back to the seriousness of Magaya saying of credibility. The best, since you are in court, the best is to advise as a lawyer, very seriously, your leader, about giving even evidence there. You don't need to shout over puppet. I agree with you. Make an application. He doesn't need to shout.
He was just responding to calls from Jubilee Matsanga. It's Murkomen who asked him
You
to
are introducing
testify.
something new.
Okay, we are moving away from the subject.
We are not moving away from that. I will shut up about that, because when you touch there, they jump very fast.
No, it's not
but
where
the
we
problem
are.
they have is that but I know your problem. The problem is that you don't have procedure. For me, the African court gives me the African pride, because in European Guantanamo Bay of the ICC, where they only look for people from either the lower part of Europe, of Serbia, but they don't go for the upper part of Europe. Tony Blair should be standing trial for the killings in Iraq, for Afghanistan. George Bush should be in that court.
All right.
So why have you targeted this simple Ruto and the simple Uhuru Kenyatta? Because their interest is that they want, there's a country in Europe
but
that
he's been let go, Matsanga.
It can't go anymore. That's why we are saying this court will work. We have 11 people.
Out of,
don't worry.
No, just
out of 54.
Yeah, why?
The rest, we need only 3 to make 14.
Yeah, but you'd imagine out of over 50, there should be excitement.
Me as an African,
give all these Africans pride as you described it.
I will never darken my continent. My friends can darken it.
Okay.
I will always make it shine.
All right.
3 people to go, and I assure you, in 6 months, I will get that signature in Durban. We shall have that court working, like it or not.
I want to wish him well, that he must continue to, sing and tell us about Pan-Africanism, which is as empty as it is, because basically when and I like Wole Soyinka said that a tiger does not need to sing about his tigritude.
Yes.
So an African must not begin to talk about Africanness for them to be African.
Yes.
You're either African or you're not. So basically what we are saying is that we are talking about issues of justice. We are talking about international crimes. And again, as a Kenyan, I'm not interested in seeing any of my leaders or any Kenyan. In fact, my prayer is that we should never find ourselves in a place where we have to be accused of crimes against genocide, where we kill our own people and find ourselves in ICC. So my prayer is, we don't want ICC, we don't want even an African court, because those things will never happen again. Now that said, basically what we are saying is that we need to come back to the place where we are saying that as a member of the international community, Kenya has a role to play in the international community. Indeed, the crimes that we've seen committed on our soil, not by our own people. You've seen murders in Mandera. You've seen murders in Peketoni. They have taken on an international criminal facet, because in Peketoni, people were selected and killed just for who they are. Now that's an international crime. Yeah. Kenya will need other players, will need other international countries to help them prosecute such crimes. ICC still has a role, and indeed a mechanism that can bring people to justice is important. So we are part of the international community. There are issues with the ICC. I do not want to bring in our politics into it. The issue about other players and Tony Blair and so on, those are good talking points. For me, is the ICC discharging justice? Are people who have appeared before it being given fair treatment, fair hearing? If that is happening, if there are problems in investigation, those can be fixed. But for me, it's not a reason to create a court whose history we don't know and whose precedent. Remember, we only judge ourselves from where we're coming. We've come from a situation where democracy is alien to us. We've come from a situation where our leadership are not accountable to us as Africans. So when we say that African court is surely going to take Besigye to court, or rather Uganda is likely to take Besigye because it's an opposition, or indeed we're likely to see Changarai go there, or indeed even in Kenya we're likely to see members of opposition taken to the African court, or even Raila can go to that court. What I'm simply saying is that we are having a mechanism. If we don't like the ICC, we might not as well like the ACC, the African Court, because the context is the same. Okay. It's alien, it's foreign.
Yes.
Create strong mechanisms in Kenya. Ensure that Kenyans don't have to turn against each other. We don't have to kill each other, and therefore we do not need
these interventions.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen,
Yes.
that's where we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. Norman Magaya, who's head of the Court Secretariat, also Martin Olo, political analyst, and David Matsanga, who's the chairman CEO, Africa World Media, for your thoughts this morning. And a number of people on social media weighing in as well, listening to some of your discussions, some, of course, opposing some of your views. Huntington Otieno saying, I'm now convinced that the African Court is as stillborn as the Class 1 children laptop. Solo has laid it bare. Wherever Paul says, Matsanga today has been contained. The discussion is beyond noise. Stanley, instead of wasting 92 million shillings at dubious AU court, the Kenyan government should purchase more cancer treatment machines for hospitals. And of course, the comments go on, and we'll get a few more from my colleague, Michael. Thank you so much for watching. That's the State of the Nation today, focusing on the African Court of Justice versus the ICC. Michael.